There we go. Welcome to January 2022 Do Tell Virtual Swap. I am Brandon, the MC. And of course, we have Katie Mangan and Meg Brown, who are the coordinators for the Do Tell Swap here with us. Not to mention co-founder Elaine Stanley, who is here as well. And we'll have a nice evening. Oh, people are still trickling in. That's nice. Vina's here now. And as people make their way in, I'll just go over a few of the basics. I think all of us are regulars at this, so we all know this, but stories are 5 to 7 minutes. And we will somehow let you know if you're approaching 7 minutes. I can probably make something flash, or I don't know, I'll figure something out, but I don't think we're going to have a problem tonight for time. We have 5 or 6 tellers signed up, and what in the way of business, we used to say, turn your cell phones off. But on Zoom, the best thing to do is mute yourself. That's the new thing when you are not the teller. Keep yourself muted, and that way we don't get strange noises. Let's hope my dog decides to cooperate.
Oh,
He's in his cone, so he's not happy, but every so often he thinks he hears the doorbell and starts barking. All right, so we will also take a break around halfway through, around 8 o'clock, a 5-minute break to get a drink or use the restroom. And of course, we will introduce ourselves, and we have our monthly prompt. So following that, there will be time for announcements. And okay, without any further ado, I would like to call to the Do Tell stage our first teller, and that is Evelyn. Please welcome Evelyn.
so in the 1970s, I was a teenager and then a college student. The book that was popular at that time was Jack Kerouac's On the Road, and we were all inspired by it. So I spent my summers hitchhiking and then met a boyfriend that loved to hop freight trains. So I did that. And when I would tell people when school would start again that I'd spent the summer hopping freights, people were always amazed by my courage. But the funny part is, I was so excited and I had this sort of unshakable youthful belief that I was like a cat and would always land on my feet. So it was really more a hunger for adventure than I would call it courage. I thought about the difference between that the other night. The other night, I had dinner with my daughter. She had just completed her first semester at UC Berkeley, and she admitted how terrified she was that she wouldn't be able to succeed. I was totally taken by surprise. I mean, I do remember when she completed her courses at the junior college and was applying to the universities and said that UC Berkeley was her top choice, but she didn't really think she was going to get in. And so it never occurred to me that one thing about being accepted at UC Berkeley was if you're accepted at a top-rated university, that also meant you had to be a top-rated student. So as she was telling me about how fearful she had been and how she wasn't sure she would have the resources, a sudden memory came back to me of the time it actually took me that where I felt like I needed courage and didn't have it. So I'm 33 years old. I'm lying in bed next to my husband, and I'm 6 months pregnant. Suddenly, and I've been laying awake for hours. So suddenly I wake my husband up and I say, you know what, honey? I've been thinking this over. He's like, what? I go, we have to give the baby up for adoption. He's like, what? No, I've been thinking this over. You know, I've told you how I spent my teen years. I never babysat. I've never taken care of a baby. I know nothing about them. What, you think me, the woman who loved Jack Kerouac, should be responsible for a baby? He goes, well, I'll help you. I know a lot about babies. I go, but yeah, you're going to be at work all day. What if I accidentally kill it? He's like, okay, okay, we can't be having this conversation. We just had your baby shower. My entire family is looking forward to the birth of this baby. We cannot give it up for adoption. So, and sure enough, of course, the next day, that giving it up for adoption didn't seem like a good idea, but I was more terrified of that than I was of ever getting in any boxcar. And yet, like many things we do, when we don't know, it turns out that we're a lot more resourceful than we think we are. It also didn't hurt that during the baby shower, I flunked the diaper pinning game, and my then mother-in-law looked at me, and I said, well, this diaper thing, maybe I'll just lay down newspaper. And she said, you know what, Evelyn, I think I'm going to come and spend the first 2 weeks with your baby with you. So I managed to muddle through it, and I now have a daughter at UC Berkeley. But I was reminded when she was talking about how terrified she'd been this whole semester, of how a lot of times the things that take courage are not the things we're going to win a medal for. It's going to show up on YouTube. It's the things out of ordinary life. It's actually getting accepted to UC Berkeley and actually deciding to go, even though you're terrified, or having a baby when you spent your teen years reading Jack Kerouac. Anyway, that's it. That's my story. Thanks.
Oh, Evelyn, that was wonderful, full of great wisdom for your daughter and for us. I love the parallel between feeling like an imposter at UC Berkeley and being handed this baby and going home from the hospital or whatever. And you just don't feel like you should be allowed to do that. Oh, I think I don't think you can ever feel prepared for that, do you? And if you were prepared, you would definitely decide not to do it. Wonderful story. Thank you so much, Evelyn. What a way to kick off our evening tonight. And so, Lori, I still say, when I want to say your last name, I still say the word museum to myself. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Do Tell stage, Lori Museum Reum. Museum Reum.
There you go. You got it.
I got it.
This story is called Overdue. All my life, I've loved to read. I'd go to the library and carry home as many picture books as I could. When we were kids, other people would set up popsicle stands. I set up a little library in my front yard for kids to come by and check out if they'd like. My very first paid job, I was 13. I had to go get a worker's permit to work at the local public library. And all through my teen years into college, I would work at the library wherever I could. And then as an adult, I make sure I lived within walking distance of a library whenever possible. When I moved to Santa Rosa, I was in Rincon Valley. There was no library yet. It was before Maria Correa High School. It was just a huge field. And I was so eagerly excited to watch the new library being built. And I go over and check on it during my walks. And as soon as it opened, I was a regular. So I got to know all the people who worked there, and they're really friendly. And you get to chat a little bit with the reference librarians and the checkout clerks. And it's really your lifeline sometimes when you work from home or you're kind of independent. And I get to know about their lives too. So it's really a nice connection, not only the books and movies and all the resources at the library, but being able to feel like you're part of a community. Well, something kind of changed though. After a year or so, a new librarian came on board, and she was different from the others. You could tell right away she was going to be kind of no nonsense. You don't mess with her. And I thought, okay, well, I was a little reluctant to go and ask her any questions if I had a question at reference. And I started wondering, it just seemed like she was kind of keeping her eye on me a lot. I'm like, hey, I'm a library person. I know the rules, I'm not going to make noise. I'm not going to do anything wrong. In fact, I was trying to volunteer there. Well, this continued for a number of months, and I just kept feeling more uneasy, and I made sure to kind of avoid her. And I actually quietly asked another employee, which days is she off? I would go to the library when she wasn't here. So one day I was in the library near the reference desk, and I happened to see a friend. And I knew from this person not to get in trouble. I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen if you're a library lover and you've worked at libraries is to be shushed or maybe even banned from the library. Oh my goodness, I couldn't have that on my permanent record. So I was standing near the reference desk, and of course she was on duty, and I was quietly talking to a friend, whispering really, just to stay out of trouble. And we were just chatting quietly, and then I laughed at something he said, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw her making a beeline right for me. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm in trouble now. I've had it. I laughed, there must be some rule against it in her mind. And my friend just kind of quietly crept away because he was kind of intimidated by her too. And she comes over and she goes, are you from Wisconsin? I'm like, yeah, this is California, Santa Rosa, California, right? And she goes, have you ever been in Brookfield? I said, yeah, I grew up there, went to high school. Did you work at the Brookfield Library? I said, yes, I did. It was right across from the high school. I worked over there as a page, which meant you shelved books and served the public. She said, I've been watching you. I said, aha, it wasn't my imagination. And I was still stymied, like, what? Do I have an overdue book from, the high school? And she's, reference librarians really get into it. Maybe she researched me and tracked me down. I mean, I was starting to think, what is going on here? So she finally said, I knew I recognized you from somewhere. And for the longest time now, many months, I've been watching you and I couldn't figure it out. But just now, when I heard you laugh, it came to me like that. When you worked at the library as a high school student, you were kind of giggly, and you would giggle with the patrons or giggle with the other pages, and you were in good humor, but you had this distinctive laugh. And she said, just now when I heard your laugh, it came to me and I knew who you were. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm looking at her harder, like, do I remember her? I'd worked at the library before she came on in Wisconsin. And, this is now 24 years later. And so I had to kind of time, reference her face and think, oh yeah, she came on right about when I was leaving. And 24 years and 2,200 miles later, how remarkable to be remembered for my laugh, which hasn't changed. So it was actually quite a remarkable thing. And since then, when I've seen her at the library, and she substitutes around the different branches, so every so often we still see each other, we get a chuckle out of that coincidence.
Lori, that was wonderful.
Thank you.
I think you hit on one of the best kept secrets is there are no mean librarians. There's this stereotype that librarians are so mean, and every single librarian I have ever met has been such a kind, wonderful person. And we have a few in our swap. I don't know, you're one of them, but I know there are others too. And another thing I loved about that was another truth you hit, that our laughter is really forever, isn't it? It's
Mhm.
one of our permanent things. That was really beautiful. Thank you,
Thanks.
Lori.
It was fun to share.
All right. And so we're moving into our third teller. And please welcome to the Do Tell stage, Mary. Hi, Mary.
Hi there. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's been rather cold these early mornings, and that reminded me of the story, which is not really a story, it's a ballad. The Ballad of the Frozen Logger. I need to lead in a little bit, saying that this story takes place in the far northern Canadian woods, where they were logging off the forest for all sorts of purposes. And also that it took place a long time ago, before we had all the technological gadgets that we use so easily. So this is the ballad of the frozen logger. I sat down one morning, 'twas in a small cafe, and a 40-year-old waitress to me these words did say, I see that you're a logger and not a common bum, 'cause only man who's a logger stirs toffee with his thumb. I once had a logger lover, there's none like him today. He held me in a fond embrace and broke 3 vertebrae. If you poured cat whiskey on it, he'd eat a bale of hay. My lover came to see me, 'twas on a winter's day. He held me in that fond embrace, and sure enough, I lost 3 vertebrae. He kissed me when he left me, and so hard, he nearly broke my jaw. And so I couldn't speak to tell him he forgot his Mackinaw. Interruption. A Mackinaw is a Canadian woodsman's jacket, which is very heavy and very warm. And I've never heard of them in the United States. End of interruption. And so I watched my lover as I saw him go. Excuse me. Gaily going homeward, striding through the snow. The weather tried to freeze him. It did its very best. And when it got to 28 below zero, he buttoned up his vest. It froze clear down to China. It froze to the stars above. At 48 below zero, it froze my logger love. They tried in vain to thaw him. And would you believe it, sir? They cut him into axe blades to cut the Douglas fir. And so I lost my lover. And to this cafe I have come. And here I wait for someone who stirs coffee with his thumb. Okay.
I love that
Short and sweet.
image. That was wonderful. Stirring coffee with your thumb. That's terrific. At least his thumb would be warm.
Right.
It's one way to thaw up a thumb. That I reminded me a little bit of Sam McGee, which is the only ballad that I know from about the North.
Mhm.
That was really terrific.
Thank you.
Is there an author for
No, I
that
don't know
ballad,
one.
or is it just, it's
I
one
think
of
it's in
those?
the folk tradition.
Yeah, that was terrific. I've been really interested in Paul Bunyan recently and looking at some of the folk tales around him.
Right.
And he does things like that. He took a dead cow and threw it in a lake and then built fires around it and made soup.
Yes. And he had a
I was
blue
like,
ox named Babe.
yeah, and he had a blue ox named Babe. Yeah. Thank you
And
very
between the
much.
two of them, they dug a hole in the western area of the United States, which we now call the Grand Canyon.
Oh, so it's a creation myth too. It's great. Thank you so much, Mary. That was beautiful.
I had a book called Let the Moon Go By,
Oh,
which was a book of tall tales. But it was one of the first kind of big books in our English library. And as I got big enough to read it, I was totally puzzled with what this country was about because I didn't know what a tall tale was. And I thought they were real.
I think one of the things that people were doing with those tall tales, they were sending them back to England and they were being printed in the newspapers in England. The Davy Crockett stories were an example of this. And the English had no way to gauge what was true and what wasn't. So there were these articles about these extraordinary animals that were found in North America that, and people didn't know that, yeah, this tradition was developing in the United States around kind of baffling the British with these strange reports. And Mark Twain played a big part in some of that as well.
If I may interrupt, I want to say that the person who tells the best tall tale in the swamp is Elaine.
Yeah.
And sometime maybe we can get her to tell it again.
Yeah. She wins contests.
Yes.
And the trophy is in the shape of a shovel.
Right.
And you know what you shovel with the shovel.
Right.
It's a golden shovel.
It's a golden shovel for something that is not gold.
Are you serious?
So please welcome to the stage our next teller, which is, I'm looking for Sharon. There she is.
Oh, here.
And there you go.
It's interesting talking about those animals because I was just reading that Jefferson was hoping when the Louisiana Purchase was purchased and they sent Lewis and Clark out that they would encounter some. He was really hoping for a mammoth. You know, he wanted to dazzle the British with a mammoth that didn't show up. Well, speaking of not being able to tell truth from error, I'm going to recount the story of my education. When I was very small, before I even started school, I knew a whole lot of important facts already. I knew, for example, that a person can be teleported from one place to another. And the reason that I knew that was because wherever I fell asleep, as some of you know, wherever I fell asleep, if it was in the car or on the couch or on the floor, I always woke up in my own bed. And I also knew that adults sometimes make mistakes in their thinking. When we were camping, my father tried to tell me that the earth moved around the sun. Now, if the earth was moving, I would know it because I would feel it. If he was spinning me or I was on a merry-go-round or any place, I would feel that air moving, and I didn't feel anything, so I knew we weren't moving. And when you look up at the sun in the morning, it's over here. And when you look in the afternoon, it's over there. So I could tell with my own eyes that he was wrong about that. The earth was as quiet as could be, and the sun was the thing that was moving. I also knew that the president of the United States had to be the most powerful athlete of all time. And at that time, it was because General Eisenhower was running for president, and that's what he was doing, running for months and months and months. And then I knew too that sometimes people do bad things. My neighbor across the street, Jimmy, his dad kept their dog on the end of a rope in the front yard. And I thought that was bad enough. But then I heard my mom tell my dad that Jimmy's mother was at the end of her rope with that child. I was horrified. And then I got to school and I learned a lot of better and more important things. I learned that there are 9 planets and we got to make them all. And I learned that there were countries of the world that long, long ago had big civilizations with cities and temples and palaces and houses and streets. The Aztecs in Mexico and the Maya and the Incas in Peru, but there was nothing like that in North America. When the Pilgrims landed, there was only Squanto and Pocahontas and a couple of other people who didn't wear a lot of clothes and went around killing deer for their dinner. So when the Pilgrims and the pioneers started moving west and taking all the land for their farms and their streets, that was all right with everybody because nobody was using it anyway. And then when I got into high school, I learned that there actually had been some Native Americans around and that we could honor them by naming our sports teams for them, Chiefs and Braves and Redskins, and they would be honored and pleased by that. I also learned that there was a really bad person called Hitler, and that he was what we call a fascist, who was on the extreme right end of things and practiced genocide. But in 1945, he was defeated, and after that, there was no more genocide and no more danger and no more right-wing hysteria going on. And then later, when the USSR was dissolved and the Berlin Wall came down, the danger from the left wing, from communism, was over too, and the world was safe for everybody. Now I'm old, and now I know better. And I'm here to tell you the real truth of things. If you fall asleep in the living room, you're going to wake up in the living room. There's no such thing as teleportation. And that's the end of that tale.
Well, thank you, Sharon. You took us on a journey, the evolution of a mind. That was terrific. I particularly appreciated how, as you learned more, it wasn't clear whether what you were learning in school was any less ignorant than what you knew when you were a child. And of course, at the very least, when you were a child, there was a wonderful, beautiful innocence to it. And thank you for that story. And you'll be glad to know I don't teach history quite that way. I am a history teacher. So I particularly enjoyed that. Thank you. All right, so we have a few more tellers and we can get to them before our break. And we have a special treat tonight. Katie has a longer story, so I'm thinking we'll save that for after the break. And Katie has gotten permission in advance. That's the way we do it if you have a longer story. But please welcome to our virtual stage, Vicky. And Vicky, I'm gonna look for you. There you are.
Here I am. I'm going to tell a story that is really rough. And unfortunately, this story swap, which is my very favorite one, always gets the first run of a idea that I'm sorry. So I'm apologizing. Okay. So
You said that last time and it was a beautiful story. I'm
yeah,
just-
no pressure, huh? Adelaide was a perfectly normal girl. She was cute. She was smart. She was funny. She had lots of friends. But she had one weird problem that nobody else had. She had a hole in her head, which meant that the sun went right through her head and showed up in her mouth when she talked or she laughed. And she noticed, even as a little girl, that everybody'd be laughing, and all of a sudden everybody would stop and look at her mouth. And when she realized she was different, she learned to talk through her teeth so that nobody would see. And then she got to be really good at expressions so that she wouldn't even have to open her mouth that much. And so she would, or she would, or she would, or she would. That wasn't a great solution. By the time she got to high school, she discovered hats. Hat on the back of the head, no light in the mouth. And she got so good at it, she became quite the fashionista. And it didn't take long for people to notice that she could pull off wearing everything from a hijab to a yarmulke to an English newsboy's cap, and the whole outfit would fall in line. And she'd walk down the halls in the morning in high school, and everybody, whoop, oh, look what she's got on now. Oh my God. And she loved it. She was so good at it. And she got even better and better all the way through college. And then by the time she hit her career years, she went to the office. And she had gone from being just a fashionista to being a fashion icon. The certain insouciance, the implied humor, the brilliant knowledge of color and fabric all followed around her like an aura. She was really good because she had her hat on, and that dictated the day. What she noticed every day, however, was the IT guy who lived in a dark badger cave of an office, his face lit up by the arctic light of his computer screens. He was a dweeb, but she thought he was really cute. His name was Herbert. What kind of person names a kid Herbert? So he had to go through life with Herbie, and in the office, sometimes he was Herb or hey, H-man or whatever. And whenever anybody squawked and screamed, he would come running out, and his glasses would show up with the white light of the computer screen, and he'd fix whatever it was like that and be gone. Well, Adelaide noticed that he was really smart and really kind. And behind his weird glasses, he was actually handsome. So they'd have lunch in the lunchroom. And then they'd have lunch in the brew pub down the street. And then eventually that morphed into dark Italian restaurants where she didn't have to wear her hat because it was dark, and into movie houses where she certainly didn't have to wear a hat. And of course, eventually into bed with the lights off. No problem there. And the relationship grew and it grew and it grew until they were almost inseparable. And one day they went out for a picnic. and it was early March, and there was a brisk, bright, clear light. And they went up to their favorite hill that they hiked up to, and the green grass was new and fresh and waving like the ocean up the hills. And the oak trees with their black branches had cerise colored, bright yellow green leaves just starting to come out. And the sky was cobalt with huge white cumulus clouds sailing across it like big galleon ships. It was magnificent. And so they spread out their blanket. And that's when Adelaide noticed a flower right there, right there, right there. And she jumped up to get it and she grabbed it. And the wind ripped the hat off her head. And she said, "Look what I found." And that's when the light went right through into her mouth. And she went, "Oh." And Herbert went, "Oh." And they sat down next to each other. And they didn't say anything about it for the rest of the picnic. She had found her hat and put it back on. But the subject leaked out over dinner occasionally, and it became a topic of conversation a little later, and it became a whole discussion, starting with questions and ending with confusion. And lots of, well, maybe, but what if, and ending nowhere. And they grew closer, and they grew closer. Until one day, Herbert said, "Let's go for a picnic again." So off they went to their favorite hill. This time it was late summer, and the yellow grass was standing up straight as though the whole season was holding its breath. The heat and the gold shimmering around them, and the oak trees were heavy with green leaves and pools of black shadows. And the sky was just sunlight, brilliant sunlight. And they spread out their blanket, and Herbert said, I want to ask you two things. And she said, "Okay, what?" And he said, "Will you take off your scarf, your headscarf? Will you please just take it off? I don't want you wearing a hat every time, all the time. Please take it off." So she undid the gigantic knot under her chin and slid it off. And he said, "I want to ask you something else." And he asked because he had never met a woman so filled with light before. He said, "Will you marry me?" And she said, because she had never met a man who loved her for that, "Why, yes." The end.
Oh, that was, thank you for that. I think I needed that today.
Oh,
I really did. And what a tremendous variety in tones and your combination of literary language with incredible facial expressions. It's always a treat, Vicky. Thank you for that. What I think we have just, I'd love to hear what inspired that story about sun shining through the top of her head. How did you get that idea?
because there was a saying back in the day, that person has a hole in their head. And I thought, yeah, but if you did, you would be filled with light when you spoke.
Oh. So you took something that is denigrating and you found beauty in it.
Yeah.
It's really nice. Thank you for that. We have enough time to have one more teller and then the break, and then we will have Katie's longer story. So please welcome to our virtual stage, Genevieve Franklin.
Oh, I thought I was gonna be after the break,
Would you like to wait until after the break?
if it's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
They've been
And
wonderful
Katie,
stories.
yes, so far it's been just a really magical
What a
night.
treat.
Katie, would you like to go now before the break?
I could, or we could take the break
Uh-huh.
and then,
Why don't we do that? Let's
Yeah.
take a a 5-minute break. We'll come back, we'll introduce ourselves, and we have the prompt. And then Genevieve and Katie will tell their stories. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah.
Very good. All right, so it is 7:40 now, right around, how about 7:45 or so? We will rejoin and introduce ourselves. There may be a couple announcements. There usually are. Eddie Spaghetti is not with us tonight. He usually has many announcements, so it'll be less than normal, but I'm sure there will be one or two, at least from Katie or Meg. And okay, I'll see you in 5 minutes. You're welcome to stay and put your screen on gallery so you can see everyone if you want to just chat, or you can turn your screen off and mute yourself and go get a drink of water or make a cup of tea, whatever your fancy. See you all in 5 minutes.
Will you turn off the recording?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome.
Oh, that shut everybody up. No one wants to be caught
Time to
on-
hear
on
Katie's
tape.
story.
We have announcements first.
Well, welcome back to the second half of Do Tell Story Swap virtual edition. And this is the time when we introduce one another. I mean, introduce ourselves to everyone. And this month I cleared with Katie a prompt about New Year's resolutions.
I knew it.
Yeah, it was kind of predictable, wasn't it? Yeah. So do you do resolutions? Do you have one? And my New Year's resolution, it isn't about losing weight or drinking less, the things that I should do. I chose a very positive one. And my resolution this year is, if anyone invites me to go fishing, I'm going to say yes, no matter what.
All right.
I'm just gonna go. So I end up fishing more.
It's not a metaphorical fishing then.
No, it's a literal fishing. Thank you for clarifying. And once again, I'm Brandon and I live in Santa Rosa, and I've been coming to the swap for 5 years or so. And I'm a local high school teacher. So glad to be here, everyone. And now I will let Katie introduce herself.
I am Katie Mangan, and yes, I do have make New Year's resolutions. And this year, someone was talking about just having a word. So I have 2 words: be aware. So for me, it's to be aware, to remain present throughout the day.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks.
And next on my list, we have Vicky.
Yeah, I'm Vicky. I live in Sebastopol, and I'm retired, and I do make resolutions, and then I look back to see if I've done them, and it's kind of interesting, some things I've done, but there's a carryover every year, and that is clean out the garage. Once again, it is my resolution. No guarantees.
My resolution is not good, I've realized. You all have very good ones.
Oh, yours is a really good one, Brandon.
Oh, well,
You're the most likely to keep it.
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you. And next we have Genevieve.
Okay, so I made a number of resolutions. I wrote them down. They're very clear, and I haven't kept a single one, but I expected that. So in broad terms, I think I would just say keep on going. Keep on going. Keep on smiling. Fear not. Manage the fear. I don't know. It's good. Something's good, even with all this jumble tumble.
Yeah.
So
I
a
like
gratitude figure is big in my life.
Sharon. Oops, sorry, Genevieve. Did you want to add?
No.
Okay. Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm in Washington, and I actually made a resolution not to make so many resolutions because I'm trying to go easier on myself this year. But the one I do want to keep is I have found that if I start work on something that I'm trying to write first thing in the morning before I get dressed or exercise or do anything, that piece will pull me back to it later in the day, and I'm more likely to get work done than if I do something else and then drift off, because so many things call you in so many directions. So I am going to try to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sharon. And next I have Elaine.
Well, I gave up making take things to do for myself and unmute to start speaking. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just want to get this off my, okay, there we go. I gave up making resolutions years ago, but I heard a bit of wisdom this year that really cracked me up, and I decided that I would choose this. I heard a guy who was celebrating his 103rd birthday, I think. And the announcer went up to him and said, "Tell me, what is your secret to longevity?" And the old guy says, my secret to longevity is just don't die."
Oh,
It cracked me up. I said, oh, that's so true.
that's wonderful, Elaine. Thank
So
you.
I decided that basically I'm going to keep a positive attitude toward things and just sail through life till she ain't no more. Just don't die.
Thank you, Elaine. And next we have Evelyn.
Yeah, well, this year I didn't, I guess the resolution I made this year was that I was going to sort of re-engage with things I had been engaged with before COVID. One of them, like I joined something called the Citizens Climate Lobby, and then COVID hit, and it was like, how can I think about the climate when we have, we have to worry about whether or not I'm going to die from going to the grocery store. But now I'm back in it. I just went to my first Citizens Climate Lobby meeting, and I feel like I've accepted the Zoom reality, but I'm re-engaging with things other than not getting COVID. So that's it.
You are so right.
Yeah.
And it's good to kind of reorient ourselves again.
Right.
And next we have Ellie Shiva.
Okay, let's see. I guess I'm on.
Yes.
Actually, I still haven't finished getting things pulled together for Christmas. So I haven't gotten around to New Year's. And I live in Petaluma. What that has to do with it, I don't know.
That's good. No, we need to know that. You Petalumans. And now we have Vina.
I'm Vina, and I live here in Pengrove. For years, I would make a whole half sheet of resolutions, and most of them had to do with clean out the garage, the equivalent of clean out the garage. And I just year after year didn't get to it. And so finally this year, maybe last year, I didn't make resolutions, but among those, that half sheet of resolutions was get better at having exercise be a part of my life. And over the years, that resolution has gradually inched me along towards now when I really do exercise almost every day. So I really do attribute New Year's resolutions with having changed that part of my life anyway.
Thank you, Vina. And Meg and Mary.
Well, I actually don't make resolutions because I know I don't keep them. But I look forward to things in the new year. That's the best way, I think, to deal with what's happening right now and all the limitations that we have to put on ourselves. I just have said, look, let's look forward to the things that we do right now that bring us joy, and with our families and with our friends, and kind of don't regret that we can't be part of the bigger world right now, in reality, I guess you might say, and hope for the best coming up in 2022. So that's where I'm at with it. And here's Mom.
Okay. I
Oopsie.
Whoops. I gave up making resolutions years ago, but I think my resolution is, thank you, Meg, to set goals, short order goals. I'm getting along in years now, and so I don't want to make too long of plans ahead. So like now, my birthday is coming up on the 1st of February.
Oh.
And so if I should live to celebrate my birthday with my family, that's fine. We'll set a new goal then.
That's good.
That's it.
I like that. Thank you, Mary.
I think she's going to make it, by the way.
I do. too.
As I look forward to that.
Mhm.
Here's Lori.
Well, if people will oblige me, I've actually have a poem I wrote that's not real long about why I don't make resolutions.
Yes.
And I don't have it memorized, so I'll read it. It's called Resolved. As a new year begins, I dread that mandate to seize the day, set resolutions, to try becoming a better me, more patient, more organized, more physically fit. Putting forth the effort, working towards improvement, I try every day. Oh, it's all very trying. But wait, resolutions, who needs them? Mark Twain had the right idea. Make your annual resolutions, and next week you can begin paving hell with them as usual. Those heavy clouds of shoulds are clearing. It's a new year, a new start, and here I am with a hopeful heart. Upbeat melodies encourage me to cue the music, keep on the sunny side of life. So my perpetual plan is to notice and share everyday joys, humming a happy tune along the way.
Oh, thank you. Lori, that was wonderful. We got a bonus performance from you. That was terrific. Katie, did I get everybody? Let's see.
Deb down.
Oh, yes. Sorry. There you
I'm finally here. I've been listening and laughing along with everybody's shares, but I'm a wee bit tired and have been on a long commute. But my goal, I don't like resolutions at all, because it's like I should do this, you should do that. But my goal is to declutter the house and organize everything in the house so that I will have a more organized space to dive into writing and take up writing more as a hobby. My other goal is to have no worries or fears and live in the day and seize, not this, I don't want to say seize the day, but kind of get into action and have a free, happy spirit. I don't know. I think that's called enlightenment. I guess I'm reach enlightenment, I guess, but we'll see what happens every
Yay.
day.
Thank you, Debbie. All right. I suspect we probably have one or two announcements. Why don't I?
Meg might have.
Okay, very good.
Do you have?
Yeah, I'd like to just remind everybody,
again about the Auburn Storytelling Festival that is on Saturday, January 22nd, and it will be on Zoom. I believe you get in through Eventbrite, but so you want to do that early, register for it. But this is a festival that, thank God, we have a few of these small, wonderful festivals out there still,
Yeah.
because they seem to be kind of dropping a little bit off the radar. But these guys do a beautiful job. A lot of writers, storytellers, just a wonderful.
Elaine.
Oh yes, and Elaine, this was the Liars contest you won, wasn't it? I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, they have one of the best Liars contests I have ever gone to, and they do it consistently. So yeah, everybody should really try to check it out. There's different sessions. It goes all day, so you can kind of dip in and out, but it's very, very worthwhile to take a look at it and support these wonderful people. So that's the 22nd. And just go to their website. You can Google them up, or I think I have a link on our website also, so that you can find them more easily. So I encourage it.
Okay. I was just inspired by what Meg said. I'm a board member for the Storytelling Association of California. And it is my great pleasure to tell you that the Bay Area Storytelling Festival is back. Yay! After a few years, we're bringing it back, and we have enough board members who are interested in putting the work into it. So this year it's going to be April 16, one day. Sheila Arnold is our headlining storyteller, and it's going to be virtual and in person as of now in Orinda at the community center. And it will begin with a performance by several storytellers, and then there will be a workshop paired with a performance of some kind, and then another workshop paired with a performance of some kind, and then an olio, they're called, with 5 of the tellers who have been featured over the course of the day, finishing it off. So kind of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And again, in the Orinda Community Center where it was housed in the past. So let's hope it is a big success and we can keep running it again after the 30 years that it ran. There were about 3 years where there was no festival. Elaine, you were always a part of that, if I'm not mistaken.
I was for 22 years of
Yeah.
their 30.
Yeah.
Is it gonna be in person?
It will be, as of now, it's in person and virtual. So you'll be able to go either way. And who knows what's going to happen with COVID, but as of now, it is both.
And it was
So,
April what? What was the date?
April 16, that's a Saturday.
Yes.
I just
And
wanted to mention that Sheila Arnold emceed a New Year's Eve all day long storytelling festival. And I tuned in and out, and I decided to go in late at night especially, which was the best part. The last stories I really particularly appreciated. But Sheila also put on a playlist of music, and we welcomed the new year in on New York time with her playlist, and then stayed on for another hour. And I'm very grateful because it really lifted my spirits on New Year's Eve here with Chipper.
She's a very positive force for good, definitely. And so we're glad to have her out here in California. Genevieve, would you like to stay on the virtual stage and tell your story?
Yep. Let's see. So I guess you want to put me on?
You are spotlit.
as a small preview, I've been telling stories that I write and kind of rewrite, and I'm fairly intentional in what I put in them. And then I've resorted to having stories that I can't quite get under my belt, so I use my cheat sheets. This one is not one of them. This one's coming from my heart. I did an abbreviated version at the end of Kind Stories in Concert, but they wanted it very, very short. So part of this is that in telling stories, one, it's brought back a lot of my own life to me, for which I'm very grateful. And I never cease to marvel at how our lives are interconnected and events in our lives connect with each other. It's like fractals, you know. So this is a story of how I became a law enforcement chaplain and how I felt that there was something very powerful that had brought me there. When I was a young child, I spent many, many, many days in bed recovering from surgeries. And my cousin and aunt in Mexico City bought me subscriptions to a cartoon, real life drawing stories of the saints. It was called Vidas Ejemplares, exemplary lives. And my resolution was to become a saint. And I would even walk when I was able to get out of bed, and I tried to do the little jumping up to become elevated, like some of the stories of the saints when they were praying. They would just get off the earth. Didn't work. But I was going to spend a lifetime trying. When I got older, I thought that maybe I could become a hospital chaplain, but the program that I wanted to apply for had dissolved. And then one day when I was at work as an interpreter in the courthouse, I saw a man dressed in black take the inside stairwell. This guy had connections because only staff could do this. He was dressed in black, and I saw that on his shoulder was a badge, an embroidered badge that had sort of an outline as if it were a police badge. And in the center was a red heart on a white background with the gold insignia around it. I chased him down and I said, "Tell me what you do." He said, "Oh, I am a law enforcement chaplain. How can I find out about it?" And he gave me the connection. Once again, my plans to follow through on that were futile because they didn't have the funding to run the training that year. But my patience paid off because the next year I applied to and was accepted to the academy. I was part of Academy 7. They are now on Academy 19. After 7 months of training, where we did things like shoot, don't shoot, we got immersed in police culture, we learned how to be empathetic, we learned how to knock on a door and ask, "Are you such and such a person? Can we come in? Can you please sit down? Your son's name is?" He was in an accident today and he died. We were taught not to say passed away. We were taught not to say I'm sorry, a practice which I don't agree with, but nevertheless. And after many, many weeks, we were finally ready to be commissioned. I was so looking forward to it. I remember jerry rigging a black shirt that I bought at Mervyn's and putting on a tab collar that someone lent me. And I remember getting into my jacket, my beautiful jacket that had that badge on the side and had my name embroidered in the front. And on the back in reflective thread, CHAPLAIN, chaplain. I was so grateful. And when I got home, I had a recording from my daddy, who knew I was being commissioned that night, and from Texas. He said, "I'm proud of you, hon." The next part was the difficult part. It was testing your mettle, going out on the call, and putting all of that practical information into real live ministry. My first call was to a man who had died suddenly in a small shed where he lived as a side building to a house. It was very, very cold, and by the time I got there, the inside was thronged with people. I would later explain to my fellow chaplains that this is not unusual in Latino families, because everybody comes from the woodworks. Extended family, friends and cousins and abuelos y tatarabuelos. I sat next to a young girl who had corralled a couple of the children that were running around, unsure of what was going on. And I pulled out a coloring book and some crayons. And for her, I found a little blanket and put it over her shoulders. When I went outside to the shed, because people had asked me what's going on, we were just waiting for the coroner's van to come in because it was a sudden, unexpected, and inexplicable death. There's no medical history. I looked at the man lying on the cold floor, and someone had slipped behind me to see what's going on, and whispered to me, "Tiene frío. He's cold." And I asked the deputy, "Let's get him a blanket." Then we ushered everybody back inside so that the coroner could take the body away. I went home. My next call wasn't too much later. Because I was the only Spanish-speaking chaplain at the time, sometimes I would get calls not in my normal turn. And I was asked to go to a home. As I walked in the front patio or the front hallway, there were 3 young women on a bench. And I sat down and just stayed with them and found out that this was the death of a young woman who had been coming back from San Francisco with a friend and driving back through the Rainbow Tunnel. They had hit, of all days, it was a snowy day, they hit black ice, and she was killed. She had recently separated from an abusive partner who still wanted a claim to her life. But she was trying to rebuild a new one. So I asked the young woman next to me, "Tell me about her." And she said, she loved to dance. And she had gone to dance in San Francisco to celebrate the opening of her new life. A few days later, I was woken up at 1 o'clock in the morning. This was a call that was going to take almost 7 hours. In fact, when I finished the call, I only stopped by home long enough to change my clothes and go into work. Drive-by shooting. Unknown assailants. Young man killed in the prime of his life. He and his family were moving from one place where they were no longer able to stay, had rented a hotel room overnight while they went to another temporary place. not unlike Mary and Joseph, looking for an inn in which to stay. His wife was expecting a child. They had 3 other young children. And he had gone across to the mini mart to get her a little something to eat. My job was to help her tell her children that daddy wasn't coming home. And then to help her call her mother to let her know that her lover was gone. And in the wee hours of the morning, to accompany them with their few plastic bags full of belongings to the home of someone who's going to let them stay for a couple of days until they continued on their journey in life. Each one of these occasions was an occasion where I could speak in Spanish to the people whom I was accompanying through this very difficult time. It is said in law enforcement chaplaincy training that you get sent to the calls where you're meant to be. And I found it to be true. In fact, if we could just accept that as a way of living, how much more at ease our lives would be. As I began to grow, I found out the truth of that saying. And that, as my favorite St. Francis prayer says, the more I sought to be an instrument of peace, the more I could find peace myself. The motto of the law enforcement chaplaincy service is being there. We were taught you don't have to fix it. You must not try to fix it. Just be there. And you'll know what to do. And you'll know what to say. And you'll know it's all right. And you'll communicate that to all of those people who have lost their nearest and dearest in such a dramatic and terrifying way. After the last call, I decided to go to the funeral service. I walked in Daniel's Chapel of the Roses. In front was the casket, open viewing. The young man whose tale was told in the stillness of his death. In his hands interlaced a rosary, no doubt the request of his parents. On his chest, a blue cap, telling of a very likely reason why he was gunned down, wearing the wrong color at the wrong time. A tattoo or two on his body that were visible, told some tales and kept others hidden. I paid my respects, came back and sat next to his little daughter, who sidled up to me and rested her head on my shoulder. I hadn't known her before her father died, but I had made a contact that she probably doesn't remember now, but that was long-lasting. I paid my respects to the mother, who thanked me for having been there for her. And I started out. Then a young woman came up to me. She said, wait. I said, what can I do for you? She said, I know you. I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Will you help me remember how it is that we know each other? And she said, "You're an angel." I said, "Can you tell me some more?" She said, "I was there when that young man died in that shed. You sat next to me and put a shawl around my shoulders and bought coloring books to the children. I was there at the entryway to the house where we told you the story of my cousin who loved to dance. And I was there when you brought Mom, the young mother, to the house where she was going to be given shelter for a couple of days. I was there all 3 times. And so were you. That's why I say you're an angel. I said, it was my privilege to be able to be with you in those difficult times. I'm so grateful that you've come to share this with me. Although I'm not really an angel, though angels were present. I was a mere mortal being there.
Oh my goodness, Genevieve, that was so beautiful. It was like so many different stories, and then you connected them all together at the end. Wow. I have no words. That has to be the most difficult job I've ever heard described.
The one thing that's, it's extremely rewarding.
Mhm,
And the people who are meant to be there are there at the right moments.
mhm.
But the thing that's most difficult, was quite a revelation that we have to learn, is that we carry those moments with us because we're not there through the evolution of the grief as the darkness turns to light. So we forget. And I had opportunities to meet some of the people that I ministered to here and there, usually in the court. And I found that they had, in fact, been healing. And I had kept an open wound or two. So I learned how to let the light in, as Leonard Cohen says.
Well, thank you so much for your story. And so last time, last swap, I didn't sleep as well as some swaps. And I think it's because we didn't end last time with a story by Katie Mangan. And her stories, as I've said, just always kind of transport me into that dream world. And so we're lucky that she's going to share that world with us that she creates. Faulkner had his imaginary county in Mississippi. Well, I don't know how you would describe the imaginary world that Katie weaves every time she takes the virtual stage. But here she is.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Genevieve. That was such a beautiful story. Hello there. I'm Shirley Ann. I come from England, from a tiny village. It's so tiny, it's hardly worth putting it on the map. You know, it all began with a phone call to my husband, Len. It came from his nephew, Graham. He was calling to say his dad, Len's brother, had suddenly died. What a shock. And would we come down to the funeral? Well, it was after the funeral that I got to talk to Graham. I said, what are you going to do with your dad's house? Oh, he said, Annie, that's his wife, Annie and I were going to sell up in London, sell our house and move down here to the village. Well, you could have knocked me down with a feather. As a lad, as a teenager, Graham couldn't wait to get out of that stinky village, as he called it. Well, you know, nowadays, with computers and all, and with Zoom, well, you can live anywhere and carry on your life, can't you? Well, I knew they'd make a success of it. They said they were going to renovate the house. It needed some work. Well, Len and I were so thrilled as 6 months later, we got another phone call from Graham. He was asking us down for the weekend. So we arrived on that Friday afternoon about 4 o'clock, just in time for tea. And after tea, they took us on this grand tour of the house. Oh my goodness. I mean, they'd replaced every window. They'd upgraded the bathrooms and the kitchen. They'd refloored everything, repainted inside and out. It looked lovely. Well, by that time, it was about 6 o'clock. Suddenly, the tummy rumbled. Oh, I think it was loud enough because I think Graham heard it. He said, Annie, what's for dinner? She looked at him. She said, I've no idea. Graham, I thought you were in charge of the food. Oh, no, he says, I'm just doing breakfast. And then I said to myself, I said, what's wrong with these people? They're highly intelligent. They can't write themselves a grocery list, go to the shops, buy the ingredients, and put a meal together. Well, I had a suggestion. I said, why don't we go to the pub for dinner? Well, they thought it was a brilliant idea. Actually, they thought I was a bloody genius. We all grabbed our coats and we made our way through the garden because that's the shortcut to the pub. Well, in the garden was the big property. There was an orchard full of cider apple trees. And as we wove through the trees, a wave of sadness came down on me like a heavy, wet blanket. And I couldn't shake it off, It was still with me. It followed me all the way to the pub. Well, we ordered our drinks and our dinner. The other three went off to play a game of darts. I sat at the bar with my gin and tonic, having a few little sips. All right, had a few gulps. Oh, I began to feel so much better. And then I realized it was the trees that was sad. Well, I must have said it out loud because this fella sitting next to me at the bar said, of course the trees are sad. There's no one to look after them now. I said, who are you? His name was Bruce. Bruce had been a great friend to Graham's father. They both had cider apple orchards. Now, Bruce had asked Graham if he needed any help with the orchard. Could he come and prune the trees? But Graham said, no, I don't need any help. I'll get to it when I'm ready. He hadn't got to it yet. Bruce began to tell me all about how to make cider, how to prune the trees, how to look after them. I tell you, what that man didn't know, you could write on a postage stamp. Well, I think by the end of the evening, I'd probably had one too many because I declared to anybody who had listened, I didn't know how difficult it really, I didn't know why people made it sound so difficult to prune an apple tree. And I might even try it myself. Anyway, once we got home, the other three went off and played cards. I went to bed. I woke up early the next morning. It was still dark. I crept down the stairs and went to the kitchen, put the kettle on to make a pot of tea. Isn't it lovely Saturday morning to have the house all to yourself, eh? So I sat there with my tea and I watched the light seep back into the sky. And I could see the apple trees, with the mist just evaporating. Then I thought, I should really go out and say good morning to the trees. Just outside the back door, I found a pair of leather gardening gloves, brand new. I knew they weren't mine, but I couldn't resist because I love leather gardening gloves. I just had to try one on, you know. And, you know, it fit me like a glove. And there was some pruning shears. So I picked them all up and I went out into the orchard. I was wandering around the trees and I saw 3 little trees. Oh, they looked very sad, very puny, you know. I said to them, I'm wondering if you'd mind if I practice me pruning skills on you. Well, I waited. Of course, I didn't expect them to speak to me, but I had the sense that they were okay with that. And so I began to prune them. Well, after a little while, Graham opened the back door and shouted, do you want breakfast? Oh, I said, yes, please. I'll have everything you're having. Oh, the lad makes a grand breakfast. Well, after breakfast, everybody was very curious. They wanted to see what I'd been up to. So I showed them. They were very encouraging. They were impressed. They told me I should carry on. And so I did. Well, by 4 o'clock, my hands were so sore. It was a real worry. I mean, I didn't know how I was going to hold my glass of gin and tonic, you know, when we went to the pub, because of course we were going back there for dinner. Well, I shouldn't have worried because as I walked in the door, there was Bruce. He had some salve for my hands. Oh, they felt so much better. So we had a lovely evening in the pub. And then the next day, I went back into the orchard to do the pruning. Well, it was several hours later, and suddenly there was Len at the base of the ladder. He was tapping his wristwatch. He said, Shirley Ann, it's late in the afternoon. It's time for us to go home. I looked at him. I said, Len, I can't go home now. I have a whole orchard to prune. You'll have to take yourself home, look after yourself for a week, bring yourself back here next weekend. Well, Len was stunned, and so was I. I can't remember the last time I stood up for myself. But he was good. He took himself home. He looked after himself for a week, and he came back the next weekend. And then we had a lovely time. So it was during that week, Bruce would come every day. He would help me. He was a great teacher, a great mentor, and he showed me what to do. Now, sometimes some trees was very difficult to prune. Oh, he says, you'll have to talk to those. And so I did. But some wouldn't even be talked to. Oh, he said, Shirley Ann, you have to sing to those ones. So I tried every song in the book, you know, Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell, the Stones, the Beatles. Turned out it was Frank Sinatra. Who'd have thought it? Well, you know, I would go down and work on the trees when work was needed, and life went on. We all became great friends with Bruce. And one day when we were working, he said to me, Shirley Ann, I've left the house and the orchard to you in my will. Oh, I said, Bruce, you'll do no such thing. You should leave it to your daughter. No, not another word. And that was that. I think it was maybe a year or so later, we got a phone call from Graham saying Bruce had died. Well, of course, we went to the funeral. So sad. It was after the funeral that I met his daughter. We had a lovely chat. And then she said, did you know that Dad left you the house and the orchard? Oh, I said, no. He mentioned it once and I told him he should leave it to you. She smiled. She had a lovely smile. She said, no, Dad understood. I didn't want the house nor the orchard. He wants you to have them. I said to Len, oh dear, what are we going to do? We've got 2 houses and 2 orchards to look after. He smiled real gently at me. He said, Shirley Ann, This is your decision to make, not mine. Go and talk to the trees. So I went to the orchard and I sat with my back against one of the trees. It was a beautiful spring day, spring as in England. It was amazing that there was a blue sky, very blue, with beautiful white fluffy clouds, but the wind was cold. I closed my eyes. I could feel something touching my face and my hands, and I opened my eyes. And the wind was blowing all the apple blossoms. They were swirling around me. It was like I was in a snow globe. The trees were talking to me. I said to Len, was staying here in the village. Oh, well, he was thrilled. He said, let's go home right now and book a house on the market. I said, Len, what is the rush? Well, apparently cricket season was beginning and the village had a cricket team. He wanted to be on the team. So we go home, we put the house on the market. And a young family, they come to look at it. They come to the back door. I loved that. And I opened the door and the wife comes in. She saw the kitchen. You may have heard the story about me painting the kitchen. So she looked at the colors. She says, I love it. We'll buy it. I said, no, you can't. You've got to look at the house and the garden first. I'll put the kettle on and make a pot of tea. Go on, show yourselves around. Len and I could hear them going from room to room. Oh, they were so excited. And we watched them through the window out in the backyard in the garden, looking to where the swing set would go. Well, the tea was made. I baked a cake. They came back into the kitchen. They wanted to buy it. So of course we sold it to them. And we moved to the village. Well, Bruce's house needed a lot of work, but Graham and Annie very kindly helped us with it. And so it was in perfect shape, just in time for the apple orchard, for the, making the cider, for the harvesting of the cider apples. But because we had two orchards, we needed some help. So we asked Jennifer Ann to come and help. And she came with her boyfriend, James. Now, you may remember James from the paint department. See, when I'd finished painting my kitchen, I had a little party. I invited my friends and my neighbors, my daughter, Jennifer Ann, and of course, James from the paint department. And that's where they two met. And they started dating. Anyway, when they arrived at our house that evening, they were so excited. They had some news from us. We're getting married, they shouted. Oh, I said, when? In the spring. Oh, I said, fabulous. Where? Oh, my daughter said, here. Oh, I said, in the little church on the village green. Oh, how romantic. No, Mum, here. Oh, I said, in the house. Oh, Len, good job. We've just had it all fixed up. You know how your children look at you like they've gone senile, too early. Have you had that look? Yes, I know. Anyway, she said, Mum, in the orchard. In the orchard. I went into a little dream. I could see it. The bridesmaids in the apple blossom pink dresses. James with his apple green tie and waistcoat. Jennifer Ann in her creamy white wedding dress. Mum, Mum. Yes, I said. Don't you think you should ask the trees first? Now it was my turn to look surprised. My dear, darling daughter, the trees, they have already said, yes. Blessings and abundance to you all.
Oh, Katie, that was wonderful. I would change my name to Bruce just to be able to be called by my name. I just love the language, the words. It was so rich. And you've really shown how becoming someone is a story. You become Shirley Ann, and it's like we are meeting and catching up with a dear friend. It's just pure magic what you do when you weave that character for us. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much.
Are you performing that at an event soon? Is that why you wanted to practice this story, or?
No, because I told, for Celebration, the painting of the kitchen. And
Right.
I didn't have a story for January and I wanted to tell one. And I just thought it would be lovely if we had time to tell the full story. And actually I told it to Sharon and there was a problem. And so she's so great because she helps me so much. She says, it doesn't really work like that. And so I changed it and it was far better. So thank you, Sharon.
And there were so many points of contact with your other story too.
Yeah.
At the wedding between the daughter and James was great. And the apple blossom tie, and that was terrific.
Thank you.
Well, those are the tellers from our roster for this month, and I'd like to call them back up onto the stage. Katie, I should have just left you there.
Oh, don't worry.
But thank you for your kind of our finale for the evening. And of course, Mary for her tall tale from the north, and Evelyn, who kicked things off. That was a wonderful story. Jack Kerouac and all. And we have
Lori.
Genevieve with the toughest job description I can imagine. And thank you for your story. And of course, Vicki, you said that was a rough story, a rough draft of it, but it was already so beautiful. And I love how you turned the whole, and I'm glad we got to hear about the motivation for that story, the inspiration for it. And of course,
did you call Lori? Yes.
Sharon, thank you for reminding me why I am a history teacher. Let's see, and then Lori, who did a double performance. We got a poem too. That was like a nice bonus. And thank you for your story. I found that everyone's voices tonight, the way people moderated their voices and struck so many different tones, it really stood out in the storytelling this evening. And so I feel really happy to have gotten to be here tonight and enjoy the stories. I feel very different now than I do 2 hours earlier. And that's the power of what you all do when you take the stage and tell a story. You really touch people. And I was moved in every case. Thank you so much. And until next month, it sounds like the Auburn Festival is between now and then, so we'll get to hear some people's experiences, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone in February. As usual, thank you to Katie and Meg for running this wonderful organization, and as always, Elaine, thank you for creating it. I think
Thank
we
you
all,
for hosting, Brandon.
of course,
You
I
pull
am
it all
so-
together so well.
Oh, well, it's such an honor to introduce you when you tell these stories. I'm truly honored. I hope everyone has a wonderful 4 weeks, and we'll see each other soon. I'm looking forward to it.
This is always the highlight of my month.
Me too.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Good week.
night.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.